When delivering corporate presentations, it's fairly well known that sometime, somewhere early in the presentation, every speaker must address what's in it for the audience. The problem is, different audience members are motivated by different issues. Now, let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because there's a formula for success that will address all who you speak in front of. And I'll tell you what it is.
A pocket-sized pep talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Let's begin by getting past the fifth word in the title of this podcast, which at some level probably offended you. I'm referring to the word greed. But in the words of Gordon Gekko from Wall Street, greed is good. And I could not agree more. Ask yourself why you invested the time to hit the link and listen to this podcast. Did you feel sorry for me? I'm assuming you've come this far because you felt you could learn some ideas relating to the audiences you might be speaking in front of, and you believe this would help you become more successful. I don't want to burst your bubble, but I'd call that greed. No, greed isn't a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I've always secretly hoped that my audiences that I speak in front of are feeling a healthy level of greed. I'm hoping they're practically stewing in their seats thinking, I sure hope I get something out of this. This doesn't make me nervous. It inspires me. If I didn't think I had something for that audience, I wouldn't be there. It sure beats the alternative. And that's an audience that slumps in their seats thinking, I could care less if I learned something or not. I just need a place to rest. Not exactly a formula for success for the audience or the unfortunate speaker who addresses this audience. So now that we can agree that greed isn't a bad thing, how do we approach this topic with the audience? What isn't debated is the fact that it needs to be addressed as early as possible in the presentation. The real question is how to address it. In a perfect world, we could survey the audience before we get there and ask them, what would you like to get out of this presentation? Unfortunately, this isn't a perfect world, and the closest we usually get is a meeting planner or a manager's version of the response to that question. That's just not good enough, and that's why I've always believed in addressing greed at 3 levels. First, what's in it for me personally? The first level of greed comes from a basic need level for us all. On the surface, when we're talking about business issues, speakers will tend to miss this one, when in fact, the majority of the audience is searching for an answer. It's not unusual for a new skill or an idea that's being taught in business to have personal benefits as well. For example, learning this new approach is something you can apply to the way you process the things you do at home. Okay, let's go to number 2. What's in it for me professionally? The second level of greed is one that is most commonly addressed and takes care of a high percentage of the audience. You'd be surprised at how many speakers do not address this and merely assume the audience can connect the dots. We all know what happens when we assume. You'll never lose an audience member by taking a moment early to address this. An example would be, in addition, learning this new approach will simplify your day-to-day activities and provide you with more time to spend with your clients. All right, let's go to number 3. What's in it for the company? The most forgotten level of greed is the one that might represent the smallest portion of the audience, but politically, it's often the most important part of the audience. What's the downside of addressing the big picture of your presentation and answering this question? An example would be, ultimately, if we as a company make the cultural shift that's necessary to adopt these new skills, it's going to benefit the company's bottom line, and that's good for everyone. The reality is we never know which of these 3 levels will attract which members of the audience, but collectively, we know we satisfy all needs when we begin our presentations this way. We're talking about carefully thinking about 45 seconds of conversation. And when you do, I can assure you, you'll have everyone's attention.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.